Welcome back to the Ball and Breakfast Podcast. I'm Patrick Miller alongside Wayne Pua, giving you guys another rendition here. We are getting closer and closer to finding out who's going to be in the Super Bowl. We will break down the AFC and NFC championship games coming up this weekend. We'll also, just touch on what's recently happened with the White Sox and their starting pitcher, Mike Clevinger, who's been finding himself in the news for not very good reasons. And, if you guys are listening to us right now on YouTube, throw us a subscribe, comment, like. We appreciate really all your feedback. If you're on Instagram, follow our stories, give us a like here or there. Any comments there are also great. And, reviews anywhere else, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. It's all appreciated. So thanks for tuning in with us and keeping up in general. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Wayne, talk a little bit about, our first matchup in the NFC with, the Eagles and the 49ers coming up here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Pat. So first off, too, I do want to say that I was correct in all the wild card round, actually. So kudos to me. And then I also did a parlay and I made a couple bucks there, too. So very, very excited about all that. Come to me for all your sports betting wagers, but then don't break my legs whenever I'm wrong. So the Eagles, I think this will definitely be a great matchup. I think with the Eagles and Niners, they're kind of similar teams, I would say. Like they both have really stout defenses, both can run the ball. Both are like top in the league in terms of like turnover differential. I think for the key thing for this game is, quarterback play and coaching overall in game planning. Purdy just does not make mistakes. I think that's been his big thing. Jalen Hurts, we think we've talked about it before where the Eagles, when he's playing, they're a different team because he can make some plays both on his legs. He definitely has the wide receivers and the offensive line, and even some running back help there with Miles Sanders and Scott. So, these are probably two of the most like overall complete teams, just with really great defenses. So definitely like this matchup that, I definitely called for this matchup for the NFC Championship. But I am going to stick to my pick with the Eagles. Jalen Hurts, I think, is the key differentiator here. Really like what I saw from him, in the regular season and even the playoffs too. And then also that defensive line. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's getting talked enough. 70 sacks this season. I think the record was the 84 Bears, I believe, or 85 Bears with 72. And that was, with a 17 game season. So this being 18. But yeah, they had 15 more sacks than any other team in the NFL. So, the Niners, they're definitely have a good pass rush there with Bosa and such. So, but I just believe in this Eagles defense. I think they are not getting it as much appreciation from the media that I think they really deserve. And a lot of that has to do with the sacks that they're generating, that pass rush, as well as their secondary play with Bradbury and Slay. Like those two cornerbacks this season, probably like one of the best combos out there. So, as much as I guess I like to, maybe cheer for the Niners, I'm going to have to pick with the Eagles here. So, but yeah, what do you think, Pat?
I know that was a pretty good breakdown. I feel like I was going right into the quarterback play when I just look at both teams because they are really fearsome on their D lines. I think they lead with their defense as great as, Philly's offense has been all year with Jalen Hurts. It's just like, I think about their defenses first when I think about both teams. And the only thing I would say that I felt was a little bit different was that in this game, and it's not his fault at all because he's not even played a full season in the NFL, but like Brock Purdy came off to me a little bit more as like a game manager against the Cowboys. I wasn't seeing, he didn't pass for any touchdowns. He didn't make any mistakes really. In the same sense, like, was he a game changer? Was he, a true factor in that game? Or was he more or less just like dishing it to his like killer weapons, like all game? And like, when you have McCaffrey, Kittles, Debo, like you can't get like a better trio of playmakers than that on the offensive side. So, at this point, we've got 4 teams left. So it's kind of like these are the teams that I wanted to see in it for the most part. We'll talk a little bit later about the AFC, but no, just for this game, I feel like these two teams match up so well on both sides of the ball. I just look at kind of like the quarterback play, and Jalen Hurts, really look comfortable, calm, for somebody who, hasn't had a lot of experience in the playoffs, hasn't had a lot of experience in the NFL for that matter, but truly looked like an MVP with his legs, with his arm. He made no mistakes as well. And, like you're saying, that defense is just suffocating. You've got, Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick, Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave. And it's like, even their backups are like, pushing on like, I don't want to say Hall of Fame stats, but like a lot of all pro type guys. I mean, like Linval Joseph and, Ndamukong Suh and Robert Quinn, hey, like just hanging out there like the Bears, single season sack, king. So it's kind of like, they just go so deep, and even like CJ Gardner-Johnson just being back as a safety is huge for their secondary. So it's like, man, they just have, just so much going on both sides, and they're going to be at home, and, they just crushed the Giants. That wasn't even like remotely close. I mean, I think everybody wanted to turn it off in like the second quarter. So I think with that, I feel like, you did a really good job at setting up. That's kind of like, I guess, my takeaway.
Well, thank you. I don't know if there's anything else to say about that. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's like, I want to see Brock Purdy succeed. I think he's got a good future. It'll definitely be, I think, an interesting, situation that they have next season, right? I think there's going to be a lot of fun there. It's like, do we go the talented Trey Lance, who has had glimpses here and there, but like nothing like with what Brock Purdy's done actually. So, which is kind of astonishing. But yeah, this is the playoffs, man. You're going against the best teams out here. The coaching there, it's going to be intense. So that being said, it's like if Purdy can make a couple plays here and there, if Kittle can break one or Debo can break one, McCaffrey, again, they have so many weapons there. If they can just break, a couple big plays here and there, this could be an interesting game if they can, create turnovers. Again, these are two of the best turnover differential teams. If the Niners can win that battle, then they can definitely compete in this game for sure. But yeah, like we've all been saying, this pass rush team, man, it's amazing here. Robert Quinn, he broke the Bears single season sack record last year, and it's back up. So yeah.
No, it's just crazy. And like, maybe we should not be so agreeable. Maybe we should be more like Skip and Shannon. I think they're probably getting, the most eyeballs out there in sports right now with all their antics and stuff. But no, just generally, I think we're both pretty much in agreement here. Eagles will beat the Niners. I expect it to be a competitive game too. I don't see any sort of landslides here. But moving on to the other matchup in the AFC, and should point out that Wayne got all the divisional round matchups correct in our predictions, which kind of set up this game because he and I went back and forth on the Bengals Bills game in our last podcast. Go check that out if you're on the interwebs. But I mean, Cincinnati came into Buffalo and just completely outclassed the Bills on both sides of the ball, 27-10. Josh Allen didn't look like a threat. Neither did Stephon Diggs. The Bengals were just absolutely cooking from the start. So I guess now heading to Kansas City instead of, this alternative site in Atlanta that was supposed to do this Bills Chiefs AFC Championship game will now be kind of a repeat of what we saw last year in the AFC Championship. So Wayne, what do you want to say about this one?
Yeah, no, right before this, I reviewed, the games that the Bengals have beaten the Chiefs the previous two games. The one time this season about a month ago, and then the AFC Championship game last season. And I think the constant theme I've been seeing, at least with the Bengals and how they kind of stack against the Chiefs, both games they won the turnover battle. So that tends to always happen. When you win the turnover battle, usually, the odds are that you're going to win the game. And they've also been able to get pressure on Mahomes, at least more pressure than, say, the Chiefs being able to get on Burrow. So I think that this game, it's going to be, if the Chiefs are able to win those battles in the trenches, right? Kind of old school in that sense. So if the Bengals are able to control the clock, run the ball, that's another thing too. Less chances of Mahomes, getting some big plays off of them. And then, yeah, just the mistakes that I think I remember the AFC Championship game. I think it was they had a chance to get a field goal like right at the end of the half there, but then they passed it to Hill, kind of in the flat, and the Bengals were able to tackle him, and they weren't able to get 3 points from there as time expired. So like things like that, I feel like the Chiefs, they're going to have to play a pretty clean game overall, right? Because they've made mistakes on both these two games. So if they can limit turnovers, get some pressure on Burrow, maybe get some turnovers there and win the turnover differential battle there. And then that really sets themselves pretty well, I think. Mahomes, this is probably, I think I've talked about it before. This is probably one of his best seasons yet. And yeah, he didn't have Hill. So it's like, just don't hurt yourself, I think is my biggest takeaway there. And then, and I think hopefully good things will happen there against the Bengals. But yeah, just play an overall clean game if I'm the Chiefs. But I think, I've picked Bengals here. They are my Super Bowl team pick. I think they'll be able to get some pass rushes onto Mahomes, and he's going to make one or two mistakes, but I think that'll be it. But yeah, what do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, I think even going back to last week's review of the divisional round, when you talked about the Bengals beating the Bills, you talked about them going to the Super Bowl. It did make me stop and think, like, why do we slight them? Like, why didn't we give them the credit they deserve for going to the Super Bowl last year, for beating the Chiefs, and kind of coming back with a top 5 rated pass rush, and looking at their quarterback, their weapons. Like, you look at any other team around the league, it's like that stacks up as good, if not better, than most teams. Like, looking at the Bills versus looking at the Bengals, like, I think Burrow and Allen at this point, it's probably a little bit just from the recent victory, like maybe inching a little bit in Burrow's favor. Look at the wide receiving cores. Like, I trust Chase, Higgins, and Boyd more than I would Diggs and Gabe Davis and the other cast of characters. And it's just like the running games is like no contest. Like, Joe Mixon is an absolute stud. And, they are down a couple linemen. I think Kappa, as well as Williams, like, will be on their way back. I know Williams had like a dislocated kneecap. Kappa, I believe, is like dealing with a sprained ankle, but so is Patrick Mahomes, and he said he's ready to play. So it's just like, I think with all that, just looking at the Bengals, first off, it's like they win this game, they are the new best team in the AFC, like, hands down. We're not talking about it anymore, and we got to start looking at Burrow as the best quarterback in the NFL, especially if he can just win, the Super Bowl beyond that, which would be a challenge no matter who he faces. But I think that's the first thing. And I guess one funny thing, at least about the Bengals, was I think a person from the press asked Burrow today, like, hey, did you say that, like, I'm him, like in a reaction to like recent media after the game? He's like, I think I kind of blacked out there for a moment, but if I did, like, it's pretty funny. But I just think, like, he has a lot of confidence, and you mentioned that last time, but like, he backs that up. Like, it's not just like him being cocky. Like, he's truly like turning into an absolute stud, and like pretty much ice cold type of veins, type of character guy. Like, he's not worried about the moment. So it'll be interesting to see him go into Arrowhead. I know they've won 3 in a row. Patrick Mahomes is like dealing with that ankle. He said he's good, so I expect him to play. Like, I think everybody does. He'll get, some Toradol in his ankle, and he won't feel a thing like going into the game or whatever. But like, yeah, I think this comes down to, like, they're both very complete teams. I just see the Bengals having like the better defense, and they've won 3 in a row. So there is some sort of like mental game advantage there. Could 4 times in a row be possible? Like, absolutely. And like, I want to give the Chiefs the benefit of the doubt here. Like, they have enough resolve here to like stop that streak, especially at home in this kind of game. But like, man, my gut's just telling me, like, go with the Bengals. So I'm going to like go with you there as well. I didn't really want to, but I really would be fighting myself if I picked the Chiefs, just to like, go with what a lot of the analysts are saying. Like, I think analysts are still talking more about like how much better Patrick Mahomes is than Joe Burrow, but like, this will be a very, very like interesting game, and the outcomes will be pretty telling.
Yeah, no, for sure. You made you definitely made some points, I think, with the biggest weakness that I think everybody was talking about with the Bengals last year was their offensive line, right? And it definitely has been banged up. But I think the one thing that we've been seeing, and the Chiefs actually have a pretty good damn good pass rush. I think they're top 5, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of sacks at least. So, and Chris Jones, he's a stud. But yeah, they've lost to them 2 previous times. Burrow, he gets the ball out fast. I think that's like the one thing. It's like, okay, great, you don't have an offensive line, right? But hey, if you can't get sacked in like less than 2 seconds, which is where he gets the ball out of basically, and he does it really accurately to wide receivers that get open pretty fast because they're really talented. Wide receivers, probably the best 3 wide receivers in the game, right? So with all that added, it's like, great. The offensive line, they just got to like nudge the person in front of them like once or twice and pretty good. So, yeah. And the Chiefs, I mean, their secondary, they've, I guess, improved a little bit from maybe compared to last year, but they're still young, still have some rookies there. So it's like, I don't know. I don't necessarily feel confident against them. Against these 3 type of top tier wide receivers that the Bengals have. And yeah, it's hard for me. I really like the Chiefs actually. They have a great YouTube channel. I don't know if anybody has watches the Chiefs YouTube channel, but they have an amazing YouTube channel actually. So and I like them as an organization, going forth. It'll be interesting if they do make any changes and if they are able to just play a clean game. I mean, hey, they have Matt Nagy now, right, at quarterback coach, so maybe that'll help something this time around compared to last year. But yeah, I think the one thing is though, yeah, it is hard to beat a team, multiple times, right, and over the course of like a year. So if there's anything that maybe the Chiefs have a great, coaching staff, obviously with Andy Reid, maybe they do figure some things out and make things a little bit easier for them. So, but yeah. Pulling for the Bengals here, at least that's where I'm putting my money on, and yeah, should be an interesting, I guess, Super Bowl, for my pick, I guess, with Bengals and then Eagles.
Yeah, one other small note, but it's just kind of thinking about like who's more hungry. I mean, I think Patrick Mahomes is like trying to chase like all-time great, and I think he's obviously probably got like Brady's Super Bowl wins record in his head. But in the same sense, the Bengals coming back from a pretty sour loss in last year's Super Bowl and just haven't really skipped a beat from regular season all the way through the playoffs right now. I just feel like they're going to be so hungry to just like prove all the doubters wrong and just go into Arrowhead and then, eventually meet up with whoever the NFC rep will be in the Super Bowl and just take them down. And we'll get there when we get there. Maybe we will have that Super Bowl prediction type video or what have you. But yeah, man, I'm just excited to see what will actually take place in this game.
Yeah. And one more thing about I really liked Cam Taylor-Britt coming out of college, and he's performed really well. Got that last interception there to basically seal the game for the Bengals, picking off Josh Allen there. So just want to give him a shout out. Hopefully, if you're listening, Cam Taylor-Britt, just wanted to give you a shout out. But really liked what I saw out of college, and he definitely has stepped up his game, I think, in the NFL here. So someone to keep an eye on. And I think the Bengals secondary is better this season. I think Eli Apple has played actually overall better than he was last year. It's funny is that people like threw him under the bus, right? I think when he was playing against Cooper Kupp, and it's like he's going against Cooper Kupp, like the guy that literally broke like all the wide receiver records last year. So like he's burned everybody. So it's not just Eli Apple there. But yeah, Apple's played overall, I should say, just a better playoffs, I think, this season. And then Cam Taylor-Britt, Dax Hill, they're just a better team right now. So a lot of exciting things, I think, from them. But yeah.
Yeah. And looking at the stats, you're right. The Bengals allow the 5th least amount of rushing yards, and the Chiefs are at number 8. So it's not like there's a huge gap there. And, their defensive line is pretty stout for the Chiefs. But just wanted to make sure we covered that. So I guess with that, we'll see how these matchups go this weekend. We'll be sure to report back either through the Instagram channel or in, some sort of subsequent episode. But moving on to our second topic, looking at what's going on in the Windy City with the White Sox. This has been a very painful offseason, I would say, for most of us fans, just in terms of kind of what maybe we were expecting from a team that's currently in their title, window, if you want to call it that. I mean, we haven't really shown much in the postseason as of yet, but kind of thinking of where the core is, where our money is, and everything else like that. I mean, a lot of excitement going into this winter and trying to shed what happened last year. And with that, we signed Mike Clevinger to a 1-year, $12 million deal. Starting pitcher for the Padres, previously with the Cleveland Guardians, was an absolute thorn in our sides as an AL Central foe. But he's been in the news recently. I'm sure you've all seen it. There's a girl. I can't call him his wife, but a girlfriend of his, Olivia Feinstead, has posted a lot of content on Instagram, kind of detailing their relationship, a lot of domestic abuse that has taken place both in their relationship and in Mike Clevinger's other girlfriends' relationship. And he has kids with both women, and apparently is abused both physically and also mentally, emotionally, and as well as with their children, his children. So just a lot to kind of look at, to think about, to unpack when you kind of read through what Olivia posted on Instagram. Check it out if you can. It's available on Instagram for anybody in the public, but just a series of accusations on each one of her story posts. And then she also shared direct messages from women that have, dated Mike, known Mike through the past. I mean, talking a lot about his drug use, his temper, his abuse overall, physically, mentally, emotionally, etc. And, as far as reaction goes, the MLB, said they're gonna look at it with their domestic policy, coverage on domestic violence as well. The White Sox said they're going to look into this situation. Comparing it to the Trevor Bauer situation, they put him on immediately some sort of immediate administrative leave, but the same hasn't yet taken place with Mike Clevinger. So there's been a lot of pushback in the media that have covered this topic so far, the Chicago outlets, as well as David Sampson's podcast on CBS. So I guess with that, kind of first looking at what the situation was, and in whatever kind of detail we want to cover it, but what is your first kind of initial gut reaction to kind of what you heard, Wayne, both for Mike, for the kind of women involved in this situation, and then ultimately, like, what do you think will happen as far as this kind of all playing out with the White Sox?
Yeah. So, first off, domestic abuse in any really capacity, whether emotional or physical, it just doesn't have any place, I think, in our society. So that being said, then I guess my second thought would be we could have signed Johnny Cueto. Like, I think that was the next thought. It was like, yeah, we had no problems there, and then he had a decent ERA for us last year. He was one of our best pitchers. So and could probably got him for cheap or less than Mike Clevinger. I think we paid like $10 million or something like that this season. So kind of on a flyer. Yeah. So I think those are my second thought. That was like my second thought there. But, I think going forth though, it's like, first off, I hope the White Sox, they do a little bit more, I guess, due diligence in terms of trying to figure out if we ought to be taking these pitchers here and there, or doing a little bit more on the background checks. And then, just getting to know the players a little bit more and then before signing them and things of that nature. At least that's what you would think, I guess, in terms of a world-class organization, how they would kind of do that due diligence, if that makes sense there. So, but overall, though, yeah, I do like how you compared, I guess, to the whole, Trevor Bauer situation. If we're going to treat, Trevor Bauer, but banning him basically, right, for an entire season or two, right? It's like, how are we going to handle, this situation, Mr. Manfred, with Clevinger? I do believe it's like early in the allegations, but this is some nice evidence, I think, that this Olivia Feinstead has, I guess, with regards to Mike Clevinger. Obviously, Mike Clevinger denies it, or his team denies it. So, but like, again, it's like how do these players, I guess, find themselves in these types of situations often, and then how are the White Sox going to be dealing with this? Good that they're having him on some sort of leave. But yeah, overall, I'm hoping that in the future they just do a little bit more better due diligence in terms of giving these contracts to these players, and then not getting Johnny Cueto and all that in the future. So
yeah, I guess the first part of it, kind of looking at just overall reaction. I think it's really inconsistent with what happened with Trevor Bauer. I think that Bauer, in his case, there were pictures that had gone viral that were just pretty appalling. Black eyes, some pretty heavy damage to the woman that was, reporting these allegations. I think immediately the amount of shock value that it kind of caused around the MLB and around the mainstream media, I think that was like really hard for them to kind of just let them take their time to do the due diligence, to not do anything with Bauer first. And I think that's like when they immediately put him in leave, that was like, okay, we have to just put him there first, so we have shown that we've actually done something, and then we'll go about finding out what this case might be. I mean, Bauer had a long rap sheet too of just being a bad teammate, being kind of up and down with his mood and kind of his personality and stuff, like a very tough guy to kind of figure out. And he may have some stuff there mental health wise. It's just like, you don't know the full picture, full story, but in the same sense, like he's always kind of been an outcast in the game. So I think in a lot of ways, like people were just glad to see him like outside the clubhouse, and like, just like, this guy's been sidelined by the league, and, we'll keep it at that. Mike's a little bit different, but in the same sense, there were whispers that Olivia had made mention of this while he was with the Padres. And it was like slowly and surely like leaking into like the MLB and like those channels and stuff. And like, it didn't really all start to hit the fan until like obviously a couple of days ago now, but it's just like, looking at the pictures, it doesn't like carry as much shock value when you see the markings and some of the scratching. It was still like obviously terrible, but in the same sense, it's just like, it doesn't captivate you in the way that like you see what happened with Bauer's situation. But in the same sense, like she's put together, quite a lot of anecdotes, quite a lot of examples of like what he's actually done in her situation, in another woman's situation. And then also has like verification of like, the other woman she's talking about is like pretty much confirming her story. And then there's like a series of other women that have either dated Mike, known a friend who went out with Mike. And it's just like, the deck is starting to stack up for this guy. Like, I don't want to sit here and be like, guilty before, we kind of prove him innocent or what have you. But like in a lot of these cases, like it takes a lot of courage for these women to like step up and actually say something, because there's a lot of risk there. It's like, they could either be shamed, they could, if they don't win, they could be abused again. Mike could find, in theory, and I'm not trying to make this like his exact example, but, he could come back. I mean, he could come back in some sort of future situation there where, I mean, I think that would cause a lot of people fear, anxiety, especially like a public figure who makes a lot of money, who may have a little bit more power. And who knows, the type of personality it takes to like date a guy like that and to be with a guy like that and like stay there. So I think this kind of leads to like the second question or what have you, but like, MLB, NFL, NBA, they all have their policies. I'm sure other major sports do as well for domestic violence. Yet, like year after year, we're seeing cases like from the Ray Rice situation all the way through what Bauer did last year, and Miles Bridges, in the NBA, kind of had a huge story break. I mean, facing potential jail time, hasn't been signed by an NBA team. It's just like, are there things the league can actually do to improve this situation versus like the administrative leave or taking away a year's pay or whatever it could be, or like, do you think there's other policies that maybe they could put in place to like really start to make some sort of like systemic changes when it comes to, athletes and domestic violence?
Yeah, no, there's definitely I feel like I'm just kind of reading more about the situation a little bit. I think one thing, and I hope I'm getting my facts correct here, but it looks like there was Olivia Feinstich, the woman that is alleging, I think, Mike Clevinger on this abuse, but along with the child, is that she actually filed it with the MLB's Department of Investigations. I think the file came actually from this summer, this previous summer in 2022. So it's like, and then I believe Clevinger signed the contract sometime in November. So it's like, if somebody is under investigation, things like that, how do we reward him with a contract, even if it's like alleged, right? Even if it's false claim. Like, again, this is where I guess go with the whole due diligence thing, and definitely trying to be sympathetic, not just like, oh, how come the White Sox did this and signed this and all that, but kind of why did the White Sox go with this? If I assume that they would look into things like that, right? having some sort of contact with the MLB departments, like, hey, is there any investigations happening with this Mike Clevinger guy that we're looking to sign? Things like that to definitely help out with there. In terms of, I guess, just when these athletes, right, they're oftentimes the just most testosterone filled individuals, and that's how they're oftentimes really good in their crafts, and that oftentimes then can lead to just filtered or kind of exposing against trauma, right? A lot of these players, they've been through a lot of trauma in their lives, whether it be single parent households or just mental or physical abuse on their own, which oftentimes, if you are one that experiences abuse, you might actually act on it, especially for a male, and that's kind of the unfortunate facts about that. So I definitely think things like mental health, which is becoming more prominent, and I think getting that exposure to athletes early on, I think can certainly help, whether it be at the maybe more collegiate level or even the minor league type of things. I think those types of things could help. If sure, a lot of the MLB or the players associations from all the major sports leagues, I hope at least that they do have some sort of psychologists and people of that nature to just for them to just talk and open up with, because I think one thing is that they are again, whether we like it or not, a lot of kids look up to them, and that's kind of the big thing there. Not to say that people are going to be looking up to Mike Clevinger for these things, but at the same time, it definitely is not a good look for the MLB. And yeah, like other situations, I think we've have talked about or are aware of things like with Michael Vick and dogs, things like that. It definitely helps, I think, just have, I think, with the athletes opening up. And then from the fan side too, I think one thing we oftentimes place on athletes, right, is they got to be these alpha males, taking down people and things like that, kind of that Michael Jordan stereotype, where he's just punching Steve Kerr as this person that if they were in a regular workforce, oh, we're gonna put this person in anger management or fire them, right? I think that's typically what happens when people act out in that kind of behavior. So things like that I think can at least help out, just taking down the stigma, I guess, of mental health, and talking about your previous traumas, and then being aware of all that. And a lot of these players, their 20s, their 30s. I think Mike Clevenger is 32. It's there has to be some idea of, I guess, maturing as you get older, or even in your 20s, because with all that money too, sometimes that can make people go a little crazy or think that they're above your average person, essentially, whether it be cognitive or not. So but yeah, I think things like that can definitely help out, and just having honest conversations too, I think, amongst everybody that are is dealing with those types of things, athletes from abuse and things like that that's happened in the past. So
yeah, I think that's a pretty good way to put it. I mean, it's more like a carrot approach versus the stick. I mean, the stick in this situation is hey, you never play the sport again, you never get paid, etc. But what can we do more earlier on in the process when you're a prospect, or I don't know if there's a chance to even go to the AAU high school level, but it's just start creating these outlets for especially athletes, because like you said, they're geared toward beating the competition, being stronger, being faster, being tougher, mentally, physically, etc. So it's kind of becomes a monster on its own, just to get yourself to the pinnacle level of whatever sport you're playing. So it's a mentality almost. So I think that's part of it. I mean, from the White Sox's point of view, I mean, the point about due diligence, the White Sox mentioned that they never heard about this, and that's pretty sad. And then in some senses, I don't really buy it. I mean, this is the same organization that hired Tony La Russa after a DUI, and I feel like this is starting to become part of their character, part of what the organization is willing to tolerate. In a sense, it's maybe not what they promote, but I just think there's a lot of brotherhood within the organization that's kind of not been rooted out, and it's part of the frustration I think a lot of us fans have when you look at past players getting executive roles. A lot of the same guys sitting in the same offices for a long time under Jerry Reinsdorf and such, and I have a hard time buying it all. And looking at Olivia's just array of posts, I think the funniest thing about it is as much is she's willing to expose Mike for this whole situation and just like toss like damning amounts of evidence and a lot of, you could definitely tell she's like emotional, passionate about, you know, how she's felt about how this guy's treated her, others, the children especially. But it's like, even in all this, her final ask was like, I just hope the MLB, you know, will make it mandatory for him to get therapy, to like go through the channels he needs to get better, and then give him some sort of small suspension. She even said small suspension. So it's kind of like, even she's just like not wanting to absolutely like, you know, crucify this guy, which is shocking. But in the same sense, it's like, I think she's just still seeing it from like the human aspect of all this. And, you know, it's kind of crazy as I was trying to think up like, you know, what could be a better way or mechanism to like get them to stop, you know, but, you know, I don't think there are really like penalties you can throw on him after the fact. I mean, right now, Trevor Bauer's a free agent. He's done his time, but like nobody's touching him. And Ray Rice, his career went up in smoke. Like nobody heard from the guy ever again. And Miles Bridges, we'll just see if he makes his way back onto, you know, an NBA court, but with just how big domestic violence is becoming in our society, and for good reasons. I mean, I think there's obviously been a lot of guys that have abused their positions of power and completely, you know, done some very like damning things over the years to women and multiple women in that sense. So it's just like, it's nice to see that society's starting to come around, especially in sports. It's just like, hey, like we have a level of tolerance for certain things, but like this crosses like a pretty clear line.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely see, and I think it's like the argument, I guess, like with sports and, you know, how we treat athletes, right? It's like we oftentimes herald them as, you know, essentially gods, right? Like they are, you know, if this is like the Greek Roman time, right? Like they are the gladiators, except instead of chopping each other's heads off, they're, you know, hitting a baseball or something like that, you know? So they're definitely heralded in our own society. We buy tickets for them. We buy their jerseys, and then they're paid handsomely, even at the, you know, now college level. Now they're getting paid pretty handsomely. So it's definitely, I think, a reflection of our society. So that's, in my opinion, that's how we ought to be treating the athletes. And if we are to, you know, keep that reflection in an ideal state, or as ideal as possible, I think that's certainly is where we have to, you know, do things, you know, kind of chastise the people like Trevor Bauer that do these certain things, and, you know, potentially Mike Clevinger, what we did, you know, kind of with Michael Vick. At the same time, though, yeah, it is like, if they did do the time, if the court of justice, if all that, if they have, applied some sort of punitive damages towards these athletes, and they have done the time, I definitely am for the second chance. I think that is one thing that sometimes, you know, additionally, like our society, how we treat, you know, felons and convicts, it's like, throw away the key. They're never, you know, going to do anything ever again, get a job or anything like that. That's definitely where I feel like, you know, as a society, we ought to be open to second chances. You know, maybe not all the time, like, you know, serial killers, things like that. That might be a little bit different. But obviously, I think, you know, for, you know, things like with drug abuse, things of that nature, for sure. I am open towards, I guess, you know, obviously trying to become a more forgiving society. But yeah, so if they are able to do the time that is applied to them from, you know, the courts, or even from the public areas, or from the, you know, whatever the NFL, NBA, MLB, whatever they bestow on them, I'm also open to that as well. So for their returns. But yeah, I think forgiveness too is important there.
I do. And I maybe to an extent, I feel like, you know, drugs and maybe petty theft or other sort of crimes, like I can more or less look past. I think like there is some level of like despicableness, if that's even a word. Like when I look at somebody who's abusing women or children any sort of way, and it's like, yeah, it's like, I think at the end of the day, you know, the penalties have been removed, and it's just like, now the free market can decide, like, do we want you putting on our jersey? Do we want you representing our city? Do we want you speaking at press conferences, promoting products, you know, wearing our stuff? And it's like, if the answer is no, it's like, hey, Trevor Bauer, you're still a millionaire. You know, Miles Bridges, you can still rap, and you still got, you know, double digit, you know, millions in the bank. It's like, hey man, you've made bank, you've earned it. But when it comes to today and like what we want and what, image we're trying to, put forward to our fan base and et cetera, it's like, yeah, I think if you cross a certain amount of lines, it's going to be very hard for you to just get that opportunity again. And, maybe these guys end up overseas, maybe they end up somewhere else for a while just to like kind of prove it and, give it a test run of like how they may look in another league, in another context. And like, if they want to bring them back in a few years, like, yeah, then maybe I'd be like able to see him kind of settle in. I'd hope there'd be like some sort of, commitment to therapy or community service for, whatever sort of crime they've done, like maybe kind of cater it to that kind of community service, like showing that they're like dedicated to changing in a lot of ways. But yeah, no, I guess the other thing too, I think when you were talking about the Greek gods aspect of it all, it's like now that we incorporate gambling, back into, society, and it's like socially acceptable, especially around sports, and they're putting sports books in like all these arenas like around the league. I think Washington Commanders like maybe are the first NFL team or, one of the few that actually like established a sports book there. It's like these guys are essentially like CEOs because there's just more money just pouring into this game from, the gambling aspects, from ticket revenue, from, broadcasting rights deals and stuff, where it's just like, hey man, like, yes, you are a ball player, but like you are a multimillionaire. And it's like, you need to like seriously toe the line like you're a corporate exec because you can't make any more sort of mistakes. And yeah, that's a ton of pressure to put on anybody. But there are a lot of responsibilities, I guess, that come with like that kind of privilege.
Yeah, for sure. It is something I think that, some athletes are just a lot more prepared than others. And there definitely is, I think, that advantage of having either a parent or some sort of friend that was, or brother too, that has been a professional athlete. We've seen it time and time again. And, like when we're talking about Steph Curry or even Kobe Bryant, right? Those players, they had family that were professional athletes before. Oftentimes, yeah, it is, pretty hard when you do coming from like a very damning family background. We see, I guess, what happened, I guess, with, LeBron James, even like he's, I think, one example of someone that's like, came from, a low income household, just single mom, single parent there. Didn't really have his dad around, but you look at him now, I guess he definitely has like this pristine, like Family Guy type of image and is making movies and is one of the richest athletes out there now. So, things like that can happen, but oftentimes, yeah, if you come from a hard life background and you're all of a sudden given millions of dollars, like oftentimes what do we expect to occur? And we see these things happen time and time again. So, yeah, definitely I'm all for athletes just having those conversations. I did watch a little bit of was it Kwame Brown on the Pivot, actually, was one of the Pivot's like most recent guests. And yeah, just hearing about him talking about his whole life and kind of his situation. Yeah, it oftentimes is hard for people to overcome those things that you don't see on the basketball court or on the field. Because yeah, like I think once you hit a certain level of athleticism, sometimes it's honestly the mental parts that get to you. So yeah, hopefully we see. I think things we're experiencing now, we are going to see. I'm hopeful, at least, that we'll be seeing overall just better overall people in the athletics in the athletic worlds overall. So I think we're hearing, at least I'm hearing, that there's a lot more financial literacy and conversations like that happening a little bit more. So athletes are becoming a little bit smarter with their money, things like that. So yeah, I think what we can do is just be hopeful of that. Things are working out or going the right direction there.
Yeah, and I don't want to understate the fact of like where certain athletes come from, like their backgrounds, their upbringings, like that definitely plays a huge part in all this too. Like there are cultural, norm standards that, may not take this as critically as seriously as like, general society might. Like when we went through the whole Adrian Peterson situation of him talking about, how he's disciplined his son, that got a pretty ugly look. And I can't recall exactly like if there was any sort of game suspension involved. I believe there was, but it was almost like by him just mentioning like, this is what I grew up dealing with, is like how my father used to like discipline me. Like, this is kind of what I'm accustomed to, is what my, family has been accustomed to. It's kind of like, not that I agree with it, not that I truly accept that, but in the same sense, like I have to like at least acknowledge that like there are different parts of society that, don't have the same social services, don't have the same economic opportunities, maybe are militarized by law enforcement, or, live in communities that are kind of, plagued by drug use, abuse, et cetera, where it's like, yeah, man, they may not have the right role models in that sense. And, it can definitely play into a person's mind in general, like whether an athlete or not. But yeah, I think that was a good point that you made, because, everybody comes from different backgrounds, good and bad. And yeah, whatever happens with the situation with Mike, with other athletes, I think one common thread that we definitely have here is like, it's just important to identify it early on and see if like that particular person can get the kind of support they need, so we can just like start to curb like the amount of cases I think that come from each one of our pro sports on athletes and domestic violence.
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, as long as we're moving the right direction, which I feel like we are, and I'm trying to be just be hopeful about all that, then I think better things are to come for the future there.
No doubt. So I guess with that, that's pretty much a wrap for the content for this episode. But Wayne, did you have any final thoughts before we break?
Yeah, so I recently saw the movie The Menu.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on HBO Max right now, so that's where I saw it from. But I don't want to spoil it too much. But they had, it's kind of like this, kind of like a mockery, or like a satire, if you will. In a sense, kind of like, it's like the American Psycho, except instead of the yuppieism that it's kind of making fun of, it's actually like fine dining and that whole atmosphere. Again, I'll try not to spoil everything, but there's one scene with a really, really great looking cheeseburger, classic American cheeseburger. So Pat, the question for you is, what or where are your favorite cheeseburgers and why?
Man, great question. Just seriously, like you always come with the good zingers. First off, I've seen the trailer for The Menu. It looks awesome. And I've actually seen that burger kind of making its rounds on Instagram about it being like the most copycatted burger right now in pop culture. But in any case, there was a place that I used to go to. I'm going to name two spots. First one is closed down. It used to be in Cincinnati. It was called Terry's Turf Club. And we went there on a whim, just to like try their burgers, because I think I read a review online and I was like, what is this place? And it was getting like national level reviews at the time. And first off, I'll just say like Terry's Turf Club closed because there was like some shady ownership stuff going on. Like check out some articles or something, but like there's something went down over at Terry's and like whatever it was. But I'll just say my favorite kind of burger, I think if I just had to like pick what's going to be on it, like bacon, blue cheese, caramelized onions, like really good quality beef, Wagyu, whatever it is, and then just a pretzel roll bun, or just like something that really hold everything up like a brioche or something like that. But I mean, this burger was fat. I think they had a pretzel roll, all the things I'm just talking about right now, just super juicy, but it just like, I crushed the whole thing. It was probably like a good pound on its own with, some fries on the side too, but like just maybe the most satisfying burger meal I've ever had. And the second one I'm going to maybe throw out there right now, Kuma's Corner, Chicago. I'm going to throw it down for Kuma's because I just love the vibe. Like you kind of just walk in and it's just blaring like death metal in your ears, and it's just dark, and you just got these rockers and hipsters and stuff. Like everyone's just kind of like sitting around, and you got like the casual folk too, just like walking in from, their business, in general. But I've always loved the vibe. I loved kind of the build up to the first time I ever went there. Again, watching tons of TV, reading a lot of reviews about Kuma's and stuff. And again, they do lead with the pretzel roll burger, but I feel like every single time I've been there, it's probably like less than two hands that I've been there. I always got something different, whether it was like an egg on top or barbecue style or just something really funky, and it just never ever disappointed. And it's partially the vibe, but it's also just a really good burger in my opinion.
Yeah, I know. I love Kuma's Corner. I actually went there for my birthday last year, actually. It was just
Sick.
me and a couple guys. But yeah, whenever I go there, I usually get the Iron Maiden. I think that's my favorite. It's got like avocado, cherry peppers, pepper jack, chipotle mayo, lettuce, tomato, and red onion. I'm on their website googling it and everything. So, but,
not that you remembered or anything.
Yeah. Not that I remember. I'm not one of the like people that on the menu or anything like that, just name dropping all the ingredients and stuff. But no, like that's my favorite burger for sure. I've had the Slayer, which I don't know if it's even qualified the burger. It's like a hodgepodge of just meat, and I think there's like cheese and fries and like sausage and stuff like that. Just it's like more of like a casserole of just unhealthiness basically. So yeah, I definitely appreciate, I think, Kuma's corner there. Other ones I guess in Chicago that I like, just a basic classic like no frills type of burger, like classic just meat and like cheese. I think my favorite the way that they do it vibe too is small cheval in Wicker Park. It's like au cheval, except not as long as a wait. It's kind of like a fast casual version of au cheval. But yeah, there's a one in like Wicker Park. Nice, nice summer day. They got like outside patio with some nice lighting and things like that. Outside, you can just get that, and you can have some shakes or just some beer or something like that too, and really, really delicious overall. Classic, no frills, doesn't need all the fancy stuff. But yeah, I definitely do agree with you. I if there's any type of like applewood bacon or something like that on a burger, oh, I love that. An underrated burger thing that I had was actually a pear, because I believe what somebody was explaining this to me of how like citrusy or like a pear type of fruit, if you will, it'll tenderize the burger a little bit, and just also those juices just complement, I think, a little bit of sweet and fat or a little bit tart and fat. So yeah, a nice like pear really pairs well, I think with the burger, just adds more juice to it. So yeah, so yeah,
dude, I can keep talking about burgers, but as far as like seriously, as far as like fruit is concerned, like I had a burger once with like banana, peanut butter. I feel like maybe some maple syrup was like tossed on top. Another place in Chicago, the name is going over my head, but was like trying to kind of compete with Kuma's in a way. It was so rich and so like heavy. It wasn't that it tasted bad. It was just kind of like, I'm just so stuffed after eating half of this thing that's like, I'm not gonna be able to get off the couch if I finish this thing right now. But I'll throw out one more and then I'll just shut up on burgers. But Vortex Burger, if you're ever in Atlanta, it's a smaller local chain, but it's sit down. It's got a very like crass type of vibe. Like there's half naked women stuff on the walls, and like it's by design. It's not like an accident or anything. Like they're trying to be kind of uncomfortable in the way they kind of set up their restaurant, but they're big on skeletons, skulls, like other Halloween type decor as well. So it's like a really funky vibe. But speaking of like my favorite type of toppings, like they will actually take like an ice cream scooper of blue cheese and just drop like a scoop on top of the burger. So it's like, if you like that, if you love blue cheese, it's like a dream, because then you just like kind of smash the whole thing down. It's like covers the whole thing. But I think they also toss some buffalo sauce over the top. So it's kind of like wings and burgers, kind of coming together in a marriage. But in any sense, like awesome question. Like I love talking about burgers and other sort of fast food for that matter.
Yeah. One more burger name drop. My former roommate and friend Kevin Park owns a burger joint in Seattle. I remember every single time I would go hiking, because that's what you do in Seattle. I would come back and I'm like, man, I'm so damn hungry. I wouldn't like eat anything like after the hike, like maybe a granola bar here and there, but I mostly won't eat anything after a hike just so I can go to his place and grab a burger. Just burgers. There's one location in U Village, and there's also another or the Ave, I should say, University Avenue, and then also another location in Fremont, close to the Fremont Troll. So definitely check that place out. They got nice Korean burgers. I usually get like the bulgogi burger, actually. Really, really good, especially, if you're into like Korean foods and burgers. Great combination, I would say. So definitely check that place out. But yeah, love burgers, man. And yeah, go watch the menu too.
Yeah. And this might be a shout out, but maybe we'll have to get Umami Q to also make a burger. So Wayne, let's make this a call to action for them to start putting burgers on their menu too, with the banh mi's and other great things that Charles is cooking up.
Oh yeah. I just had the honey butter fried chicken one. I think they're not doing it anymore. They did it I think last week, but oh man, it was so good. It was like a fried like brisket, basically like brisket with some breading on it, and had like a nice coleslaw, and I think there's like a hint of mint in there too. Like all these different flavors. It was so good. But and I think I've talked, like, I love honey butter fried chicken. Like before, Charles made it cool with the Mommy Q. Honey butter fried chicken is like one of my favorite spots. The names kind of says it out. Just again, no frills, delicious food. And yeah, like awesome fried chicken overall too. But yeah, with that brisket, man, that was a deadly combination. So yeah, shout out to Charles. Yeah, shout out to Charles there.
That's awesome. For my final thought, I'm going to bring the breakfast element into our show. But last weekend, I went to a local brewery for breakfast. They have, they're a full brewery. They have actually coffee drinks. They do dessert drinks, other stuff, but they have breakfast, lunch, dinner there, which is pretty unique for a lot of the breweries I've ever gone to. I mean, usually they'll have a menu, but it's not really like the most expansive thing that you'll ever see. But what the special element of this is that they actually, they do venison and they do other wild game. And I ended up getting a venison biscuit, which is basically acted like a sausage biscuit with cheese and egg, but really good cheddar. The biscuit was huge and fluffy. It was about the size of a burger when I actually looked at it, but it was venison, cheddar, and then a very soft scrambled egg on top on the biscuit. We tried other menu items of theirs as well, and I kind of paired it with a coffee flavored beer, which was awesome. The place is called Caboose Brewing. It's out in Virginia. But the question that I had for you, Wayne, is wild game. What do you enjoy? What have you tried? What are maybe some things that you would recommend to our audience if they're willing to explore the different types of meats that are available out there on this planet?
That's a great question. Different kinds of meats. I mean, I know some people are a little bit hesitant on lamb, but I'm good with lamb. Not too gamey, but is a little gamey. That's like, basic game, I guess, for some people. One thing I have tried, I know a lot of people, I guess, equivocated to, I guess, chicken is crocodile. I like a good crocodile. I think it's got to be a little bit charred, in my opinion, but because it is a little bit soft, similar to chicken in that sense. But like a nice charred crocodile is so good. In a lot of, I guess, like Southeast Asian countries, they have like crocodile farms, and there's a lot of crocodiles there, and there's some crocodile meat too that they serve, or crocodile jerky. That's usually a good spot to get them for that. I guess other ones, I've had ostrich before. That was actually pretty nice too. Get a little bit on the gamey side, but still like really, really solid. Maybe not a good old fashioned chicken breast, but still I think, pretty applicable there. I have had monkey intestines before. That's okay, but I feel like it's much more interesting saying that you ate like monkey brains or monkey intestines or something like that than actually eating it. It's just not as fat, right? So, but yeah, I definitely like a good crocodile, I would say.
No, it sounds pretty good. I'm on that kind of front. I will say that I had some really good frog legs in Phoenix. I don't know if that's everyone's like cup of tea, but like you're saying, on maybe stage 1, stage 2 of where you want to go with wild game, I feel like frog legs and some butter, it just tastes like some really tender chicken. I mean, it was pretty delicious. When in Argentina for a study abroad at DePaul, I tried wild boar, which again, kind of common if you look at, menus around town at like, specialty restaurants, burger spots, whatever that may, touch on some wild game like buffalo or something like that. But wild boar has like a pork belly bacon type quality too, where it's just succulent, like really salty, but also really good. And it's actually a pretty funny story and may lead into part of my final thought. But on the negative side, on the same trip abroad to Argentina and Chile, I believe it was in Argentina, but one of my professors, Luis Lorea at the time, basically asked me to try something that was on the table. And I asked him, he's like, just try it. And came over to me. It looked like black beans, and basically just stuck my spoon in without, really giving one, and tried it. And it just literally tasted like blood and lead and, things that just, you probably shouldn't eat. And I just looked over, and he was pretty much laughing in complete silence, but looked like he was about to tear up just at how funny it was based on my own reaction. But I tried cow's brains while in Argentina. It was just, seriously one of the most disgusting things. But I guess I bring that up in part because, our professor, who I believe Wayne had too, but Luis Larrea had passed away a few weeks ago. And, great guy, great teacher, really practiced the Socratic method, but also just a huge Bulls fan in general, and somebody I would always kind of talk basketball with while in school. And then a little bit after graduating too, I kept in touch with him for quite a bit of time, but was sad to see him go. This was weeks ago now, but just wanted to say rest in peace officially to Luis. And if there's any sort of connections for anybody listening or anything like that, just I'm sure you can all get behind who Luis was. And if there was ever family listening to this, my condolences, and what a great guy he was.
Yeah, shout out to the integrated marketing IME out there at DePaul University. But Larrea, great guy, always a fun person to just talk with and hear his life stories. Loved it, definitely a fulfilling life, I would say. Definitely rest in power to him and condolences to the family there. So,
well, for sure. Great episode, expansive, will be diced up into different parts. But again, if you're on YouTube listening right now, throw us a like, leave us some comments based on what you heard. Any follows, reviews anywhere are always great. And we look forward to next time.